Okay, well, this is not Abuja. In case you're wondering, just so you know, it's a different scenery. I mean, it was chilly, it rained all the way last night here in Abuja. But this right here is Lagos. I want to say Ayos Lagos.
Ayos Lagos. Hello and good morning. That's Skyline there. Ayo, what are we looking at?
Now known as Otedola Bridge. This is an extension of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The toll gate terminates a little further down this particular road. I mean, when you go up that way, not down your screen, it terminates somewhere around the 7-Up bus stop where the toll gate was. There's no toll gate there anymore, but the expressway peers into two there and leads into the Secretariat. Now, why is this part called the Otedola Bridge? Well, we'll soon get to the part that is called the Otedola Bridge. It's just part of the major highway, and we're going to go all the way to the left to show you where the part that is called the Otedola Bridge. It is so called for only one reason. Not too far away, just around the corner there, there's an estate named after the former governor of Lagos, Sir Michael Otedola. And that is why this particular area is now called the Otedola Bridge End. You'll also remember that there was some kind of fire outbreak there not too long ago, which is also part of the reason that people, it became a little more famous for that one. There was a fire an accident that occurred on the Otedola Bridge at the Lagos end of the Lagos Expressway, where a tanker lorry fully loaded with fuel caught fire and all of that. But that is what you are looking at now in this part of the city of Lagos. Chamberlain, well, Otedola Bridge wasn't like this before before they inherited you, like right there in Abuja, but now they are trying to lay hold. No worries. I mean, it's just one of those things. You're on loan. Well, the temperature right now in Lagos.
I'm so glad you're coming to terms. I'm so glad that you're beginning to accept these truths and just move on with your life. I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
How many times did I tell you?
Kayla.
I belong to nobody.
Belongs to
How many times will I
Chevalier
say
belongs to. It's okay, Ayo.
Okay,
just,
let me change it.
Let's move on.
I will inherit the kingdom of God.
Oh, okay.
Well, the kingdom of God is here on earth. The kingdom of God is here on earth, and who knows? Whether it even starts in Lagos, but hey, you know what? You are on loan, just the way footballers can be on loan to some other clubs. So, go ahead and have fun. Kayla, don't worry. Who knows? You probably even also come back to Lagos permanently yourself. But no, I'm not even going to struggle with that.
This is a prayer. This is
All
a prayer.
We'll get to see what happens. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to the program. So, remember, yesterday we did bring you some images that came through at the time about some police pensioners who were not happy with one. They wanted to get off the pension scheme that they are on to a different one, and then they were saying, look, they've got several months of unpaid pensions, as almost getting salaries, unpaid pensions. So today, as part of the events that will be happening today, the Inspector General of Police will be briefing, and naturally, you'll expect some response to this, because some of those placards, the inscription was, IGP, don't be part of this. Do something. To add his voice in a manner of speaking, I mean, to put it simply, so that was what the inscription. So he will be speaking today, and who knows, he might also be speaking about, guess what? State police. Because remember at the time, several papers were quoting the IGP as to disagreeing with the call for state police, and I think Kayla was saying, whoa, why would the IGP be doing some of this? And so maybe he might respond to some of those narratives this morning. You never know. So his presser will be coming up later today, and those questions, I think he knows he'll be expected to speak on some of those matters. So who knows? Will his position change about state police or not? Time will tell.
That's actually one to look out for, because, he got a bad rap. He got a bad rap for that. Another thing that we think the IG is going to be speaking about is this situation in Dawaki.
Okay.
And of course, the security situation in the FCT. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking out for at this particular press with the Inspector General of Police. So big one there. Also happening today, we'll see the continuation of the Labour and federal government meetings. There has to be some kind of 54,000 no.
Oh.
They said no.
Oh, dear.
They said no. So we'll be listening out for whatever. Maybe they will increase it. Maybe they'll reduce it. Maybe people will walk out. We don't know how this is going to work, how it's going to end. But the minimum wage conversation will continue. The meeting between the Labour Union and the federal government.
That's a big one to watch.
And business this morning will be
business
focusing,
side?
yes, business this morning will be focusing on assessing latest MPC rate hike. Well, there is some hula-baloo about that already. We understand that the OPS is already kicking. Who else is going to be kicking? Or are we all just going to keep watch, keep silent, and just, as the former Minister Bola Ige said, so don't look? I guess more of that will come this morning on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. So now, let's go to the papers.
Okay, let's go ahead and take you through some of the dailies here this morning. And we start with Daily Independent. National minimum wage. Governor's absence stalls negotiation as Labour rejects fresh 54,000 naira offer. NLC TUC insists on May 31 deadline to embark on strike. So that is about the latest updates on that minimum wage debacle. And then you move on to New Telegraph. Hardship. Chaos looms. Life becoming tough for average citizens. ACF warns Tinubu. And then from then on to Nigerian Tribune. Tougher times ahead as CBN raises interest rates to 26.25%. CCPC, NECA, analysts decry rate hike. Nigerians facing unbearable times due to your policies, ACF tells Tinubu. And then you get to see Nigerian News Direct. MPC members attribute rising inflationary pressure to food inflation, seek increased security of farming communities, raise interest rates to 26.25%. Of this Nigeria, Nigerians face further hardship as interest rate hits 26.25%. Hike will hurt real sector investment, says Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. CBN blames high forex rates, others for driving food inflation. But above that, you also have minimum wage. Again, NLC, TUC reject FG's 54,000 naira. Organized labor continues negotiations with FG today. So it's an ongoing matter at the moment. And then The Guardian, MPC outcome. CBN guns for stable currency. FPIs as rates hike hurts businesses. Or Vanguard, inflation battle. CBN raises interest rates to 26.25%. OPS protests. They also report on the minimum wage here. Labour FG meeting ends in deadlock. Well, have a look at Leadership newspaper here today. Fear grips Plateau residents as gunmen kill 50. That's what you see right there. Business Day. Manufacturers exports ride weaker naira to 9-year high. Triples in 1 year. Or Daily Trust. Bandits kill 50. Burn houses in Plateau. That's an unfortunate scenario right there. So there you go. That's a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Okay, so there you go. Some of the issues right there. And as always, we always like you to talk to us. And then, you know, what? I got to talk back. Doesn't sound bad. Okay, so look at this. 10 billion naira National Assembly Park recreational facilities misplaced priorities ascribed to Peter Obi, and is urging Labour Party members, that's the New Telegraph, Labour Party members to put Nigeria's interest first. So what? Labour Party members. So the thing is, the lawmakers in the Labour Party, in the National Assembly, do we expect anything different? When the debate about the cars, allowances came through, everybody, you saw what happened. They didn't return any of those things. They thought that, what can we do? Almost saying their hands are tied. But let's see what happens with this one. But 10 billion naira National Assembly Park. Look, I'm wondering what will they be parking here, though? Which is part of the question I was also asking. Isn't this outrageous? 10 billion naira? Recreational facilities? Wow. Because in the meantime, you see year-on-year average fuel price is risen by, guess what, 176%. And then diesel is by 68%. Subscribe to the data from the Bureau of Statistics. And so this is in spite of the, you know what they always tell us, diesel is deregulated. Subsidy is now removed for petrol. Is this what we're going to keep facing? Because if it's the vagaries of the dollar, it's always going to go up. It's been going up from inception. Tell me, since you were born, when has it not been going up? So these are some of the things we'll see how we can explore as we proceed here today.
I think I'm going to be taking from the Guardian newspaper, still on politics. We're seeing there more on it from page 6, the APC dismissing merger talks as Peter Obi visits the Labour Party secretariat. He's doing a lot of visiting these days, and I was looking at some of the talk points here. Our current interest about Nigeria's survival, not elections, said Peter Obi. So I know all of the talk about 2027 is about to get really heated because negotiations have started. There's talk about how the Labour Party should reposition itself, what the All Progressives Congress should be doing, what the PDP should be doing. So all of that's coming up. But more on that story from page 6 of the Guardian newspaper today. And of course, yesterday's MPC meeting and the fallout from that on the front page there.
Is it the first time where we hear them say the OPS are protesting? They're protesting that 26.25%. They won that. What in the world?
That's 150 BPS.
How do you access credit at this rate? It's a death knell.
It almost feels like they don't want you to access credit. And then, of course, this sad story here from Jos in Plateau State, morning from page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Bandits killing 50 and burning houses in Plateau State. When is this going to end? When is this going to end? The Wase Kanam axis is no longer peaceful, it says. And the police says they've killed 7 of those attackers. But more on that story from page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Very sad situation that we have going on, recurring. This has been going on since I was born. Every single time we hear about these stories from Plateau State, and every time we pray for our brothers and sisters in that state. But the security agencies have to do what's necessary. This has gone on too long. It's becoming really embarrassing.
Kayla, and I'm hoping that everyone who needs to listen is listening right now. I have a very interesting take this morning, guys, on the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper, where the federal government is insisting on that the foreign airlines in Nigeria, is right above the nameplate, by the way, foreign airlines in Nigeria that are going out of Nigeria should patronize Nigerian catering services. Foreign airlines are being told again to patronize indigenous catering services when operating flight services outside of Nigeria, and this is in compliance with bilateral air service agreement, BASA, that the countries signed with their governments. And I find it very, very interesting, honestly, very, very interesting. So let's also begin from home, I dare say. I don't know for how many times, Chamberlain, we have talked about Nigerians, the government officials, patronizing first homemade indigenous automobile organizations in the country. First, do that first, begin from there. I don't know if there's any policy to that effect, or if there's any move indeed to that effect. Yes, agreed. We may not be able to fully meet our local or domestic needs right now. The same way we are not even able to meet our domestic needs for crude. But can we even begin by calling all the automobile manufacturers or assemblers in Nigeria and saying, we'll patronize you first. Keep Nigerian dollars in Nigeria, Nigerian naira in Nigeria, not having to export the naira via the dollar. Can we begin from there? There was a question that I raised with someone, I don't know which day it was. It was in the 70s when the General Gowon at the time, as head of state, went to commission the Kaduna automobile plant, the Peugeot automobile plant in Kaduna. And there was a policy at the time that Nigerians, government officials, government in particular, should patronize first made in Nigeria vehicles. First. That was the policy at the time. I don't recall any time that that policy was ever changed. I don't recall any time that we decided that, you know what, we're done with this one. Let's go outside of Nigeria. The organizations who are in charge of vehicles, automobiles in Nigeria are crying. Can we at least support them by patronizing them first? And we can say that for every other thing that we do in Nigeria, that we consume in Nigeria. Enough of this patronage. If we do have to tell people who are flying into the country to fly out of the country using domestic or indigenous catering services, can we do the same? Chamberlain.
Yeah, you know, when the president did say that all new purchases of vehicles by MDAs should be CNG, guys, I think after that, they held a 2-day FEC meeting after that. And I saw in one of those highlights, when we put it up, at the bottom strip, so it was approval for, I think, Toyota vehicles. And I thought, okay, that's an area we need to ask more questions to find out what's going on with that bit. Did it slip in? How did that slip in? Because that directive is already there to ensure it is CNG. And the thing about that, yes, the federal government may have taken that position. What about the states? Because how many vehicles do governments, MDAs at the federal level have to impact sufficiently in the scheme of things in that area, that sector? So if the states were to key into this, you can imagine the kind of impact it will have. So most times the states have also got to be on board most of these policies, because that is where all of these things happen. That's where the people are. So the state governments will look to you. We wait to see, what are you even announcing? What policies do they even have to affect or to at least boost the policies that we see while we're trying to make ends meet here? All right, guys, we'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.
On police, and you do not focus on the social, political, and economic conditions that create insecurity, you're actually wasting your resources. We have been, effectively mobilized around the banditry, kidnapping as the only source, so that we do not discuss the more fundamental cause of insecurity, which is terrible governance that we have. This is the governor that is unable to address the basic needs and aspirations of citizens that has led to the kind of insecurity we have had. I think the state police is an avoidance, and given those who should do something about governance the authority not to do anything.
Yeah, I guess it's been a long time coming, just probably, but those are some of the things we're going to focus on here today with Honorable Francis Waive, who is the Chairman, House Committee on Rules and Business. He joins us here in the studios. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, good morning, Chamberlain.
Good morning.
Sister. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so...
Good morning to Nigerians.
All right, so the governor of Gombe State equally weighed in on this matter only yesterday, and he did say that creation of state police will allow the governors to address security issues in their states. And then he also did say that a situation where security agencies and their commands are based elsewhere, not in the state, will not work for the state. So he spoke extensively on some of those matters. And he did say, yes, National Assembly will have to look into this matter now and grant them their wish. So this, and then this comes after there was another report where it talked about, I think it's 30 or 36 state speakers had agreed for state police. Yeah. So what is the thinking now for National Assembly?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing that our country, we're beginning to move in this direction. Insecurity has reached a level where everybody has become open to whatever can be a solution. And the general consensus is that when we have it local, it will be more helpful. I'm very excited that even in the National Assembly, unlike previously when there were sharp divisions, some people not wanting state police, some wanting, this time there seems to be a general consensus, especially since the debate on second reading of the Deputy Speaker's bill seeking for the creation of state police, and then the conference that we had about that. Since then, the discussion has been going on and expounding. There has not been voices of dissension at all, except on that day of our summit, where the AIG that represented the IG spoke, talking about the police force not wanting state police. But that apart, every member of parliament seemed to have agreed on this. And I think with the agreement of the state governors, they are very key in this matter, and the state assemblies, because we could pass it in a constitutional review, but the constitution requires that 2/3 of the state house of assemblies must, concur. We could get to a situation like we've seen in some matters in the past, where we make our own recommendations, pass the amendment, and then the state governors twist the house of assemblies, and we don't get it 2/3. So this is a beautiful development that the governors and the state assembly speakers are already speaking in that same direction. So I see us going to win in this matter. Nigerians are speaking in one voice. Well, local intelligence, local policing.
Well, the governor's bit will come in much later. But how is the National Assembly or you handling the narrative from the police when you just mentioned now them not wanting it? It didn't kind of fit up with a lot of people that wonder what's happening here.
Yeah, if you remember that day when that AIG, I've forgotten his name, that presented the IG, when he made that presentation, there was a little bit of an uproar. How can you say this? But the beautiful thing about democracy is that everybody would have their say, but majority will have their way. And the way it's going, the majority is for state policing. We cannot simply continue with a unitary system of policing for our country. We must find solutions to the problems of insecurity. And everyone has agreed. In fact, we see it in our experiences where we come from, where the state police architecture is such that locals are not populating it or are not in charge of it. And even the state governor is the chief security officer of the state, is not also in charge of it. He can fund them, he can give vehicles and all of that, but he cannot really pass out an instruction.
Some of the key concerns, which I believe members of the assembly would have heard a long time ago, is to ensure that the state governors don't become emperors by running their political opponents out of town with this.
Yeah, that's a very clear and present danger. But with the political developments along the line, even in the National Assembly, that issue had come up, that the state governors will use it to do what they like. But the development is going on in such a way that we are reaching a situation with our democracy maturing, that such cases will be few and far between if they happen.
But how can we say that for sure now? Because I don't know which states, somebody remind us, that has conducted local government elections and the party in power did not win 101%. In fact, using security agencies.
In fact, we don't have local government elections in our country.
So, there you
we
go.
don't even have local governments anymore.
There you go.
It's a very sad development because that ought to be the closest arm of government to the people. But for the issue of the policing, that is why we are pushing, some of us in the National Assembly, is that this thing should go right on down to local government policing. That's what you find in most developed democracies.
How do you then have local government policing?
No, that's the development. There was a time when we didn't want state police. Now we want state police. We are going to get to the point where we will want local government policing. During this constitutional review...
Isn't that part of what this is supposed to do?
Yeah.
Multi-level policing. You still have federal police who can intervene at some point in the state. You have the state, then you have the local government.
Yeah, federal police should be dealing more with issues that are region, trans-border, and all of that. But the state police should be able to deal with local issues. The legislation we are going to bring up when we bring in the amendment to the Police Act is going to be such that the state governments will know the boundaries, and the federal government will know the boundary for the federal police. Just like the FBI in the US, they know their boundary as different from what the New York Police Department, for instance, will do. Those are the kind of things we are going to bring up when we, amend the Police Act, because we must do that consequent to the constitutional amendment where we are removing the police from the exclusive list.
It's interesting that you're bringing up the amendment of the Police Act. When we talk about the abuse, the fear of the abuse from governors, the structures in place to stop that sort of abuse happening, to prevent that abuse happening from the state governors, doesn't exist yet. Which is where the kickback against state police comes from. Not from people who want to be able to do whatever they want, no, just from well-meaning, concerned Nigerians. Listen, if, as Chamberlain said, elections at the local levels are not, state INEC in many places are run by the governor. The state assembly, the governor is in charge of it. Local authorities, he puts everybody there. How do you want him to be fair when it comes to state police? How do we know he's not going to be worse? And then the structures to ensure the accountability, to ensure that he doesn't have, or she doesn't have the power to do this. No accountability measure is in place yet. And yet we still keep hearing the calls for state police. How do we get those accountability measures in place before we hand over such power to these men?
Yeah, we can't throw the baby and the bathwater away. There actually is a looming danger in that respect. I mean, state governors misusing state police. But we intend to deal with that first by legislation, such that the act, the Police Act, will be amended in such a way that the governors will know their limit. And there will be a point where the National Assembly will be able to come in, where the national police, so to speak, the federal police, will be able to come in. Those are the things we're thinking about.
Help me understand a few of those limits. What kind of limits would you suggest? Just maybe one or two that would stop this governor from being an emperor.
For instance, there are some regulations in place right now that can become a matter of law. During the elections, there's a limitation to which the police can, intervene, security agencies. Now, that's usually in INEC regulations. If you make that a matter of law, it's setting up the state police, then, that brings some form of protection. That is just one of such measures. And we're going to subject this, of course, to public hearing. And civil society is doing a good job. We expect that they will come up with provisions that will help. And Nigerians who are already saying that because of the level of insecurity, that state police is the way to go, they should also come up with such suggestions. We don't claim in the National Assembly to know everything, but we know that the Nigerians have vested in us their power to make laws. And we expect to hear their suggestions on the way to go moving forward. But I've given you some ideas of what we're thinking about.
I mean, we hear you. Of course, there are good sides to the arguments and then the other side to the arguments. Would it be a good idea, though, to say, for instance, okay, if you're going to have this state police, they will not participate in elections. Federal police handle all election scenarios. Would that work in any way?
Well, it will to some extent, because if you have done elections before, like some of us who have gone through it, security agencies at the local level, even at the national level, they get used by the players. And many times, it's not actually a function of the state. It's a function of corruption. That's usually what happens, a function of corruption. So even at the local government election level, where the governor is in charge of everything, it's also a function of corruption. Because I don't want to be specific. If you allow a policeman to do his job normally, he will do it.
But that's the thing.
But when you influence him...
But will they allow? That's where the concern is. Now, if at the state level, the governors have they have the resources, they control the resources. So what makes us think that they will not deploy that resources for corruption purposes and utilize those security agencies to run everybody else? I said, no, this is my turf. No matter what happens, I'm getting this.
Yeah, that danger is definitely there. But if you look at this level of insecurity we're in right now, we have gotten to a point where, where the police
is fine. Nobody seems to be complaining about that part.
The police, for instance, is not able to cope. We are bringing in the armed forces, the army and all that. So at the state level, some governors will know that it will be risky to push the patience of Nigerians to some level. You remember in the First Republic, Wild West, we pray we don't get back to a situation where we have democratic backsliding in our country. But I know that the governors know that if they push it to an extent, some people will give them a run for their money. And I think as we develop as a democracy, our people will continue to apply themselves, continue to get involved, continue to own the system, and continue to speak up. And with the benefit of modern technology, information technology, freedom of information, many of these things will gradually get reduced as we move forward.
I mean, we're looking at Plateau State right now. We're taking a look, with what just happened recently. And this has been happening for so long.
Very sad.
Very sad situation. If there was state police, I believe if policing is at local levels, and many Nigerians know this.
Yes.
The problem is the fear of abuse.
Yeah.
And the structures to ensure that that abuse doesn't happen. Until that is put in place, you will still get the skepticism from a lot of Nigerians. But I want you to be able to get your thoughts on the feelers you're getting from these state governors. You just mentioned something very crucial right now, which is that they have to be careful. You don't want to slide into the wild, wild west where people don't even trust the democratic principles anymore.
They must allow protest.
No, yes, you must allow dissenting voices. Yes, you must allow dissenting voices. Yes. Are you getting the feeling that a lot of these state governors are ready to be reined in? Because whatever reforms would be put in place to stop the abuse would hold them down. Do you get the feeling from a lot of these state governors that they're willing to be controlled in this regard?
Yes, especially because if you look at what has happened since '99, when we returned to democracy, things have been changing gradually, not as fast as we want. What the first governors of this democratic Fourth Republic were able to get away with, some governors can't get away with it with them again. So we're developing, and the governors that are there right now won't be there forever. And the new ones coming will know that we are getting to a stage where they can't just do what their predecessors did.
So, Honorable, will it be out of place to say National Assembly to prove to us that they are their own people by saying, okay, since Nigerians are apprehensive and cautious about governors abusing this police, if we put them in charge of police, can the National Assembly say, in order to, if we can't find a way around this, because they seem to circumvent this thing anytime you come up with laws, let's remove immunity for the governors?
I don't think removing immunity from the governors is what will be the solution, because...
It's part of the solution.
No, the immunity is not what makes them do what they do, because the immunity only protects them from arrest and prosecution.
If you know, and all that. If they know that, look, if you do something or you're the one that gave an order for something to happen, you can go into the witness box.
No, you know that most of these orders...
face the music.
Most of such
Instead of waiting for 8 years, you gather much more money and then you kill all the evidence.
Most of such orders, really, they don't come out formally. They are really informal and they are done under the table. So even if you remove immunity and you say you cannot prosecute, you've got to prove again. So but that will not solve the problem.
That's not
removing the immunity. We'll get to a point in our democracy where the immunity will be out. But at the moment, state police cannot be the excuse for removing the immunity, because the immunity is not the reason for the governors doing what they are doing.
How can we say that for sure when we haven't done it? It is if we do it, then the people will know they can face the music.
I get the fear from them. You know, if you talk about removal of immunity, it means that this governor
can face the music.
Yes, but the governor will probably spend all his time in office going to court and being prosecuted and whatnot.
Is it not a regular?
But what's
wrong with going to court?
Isn't there a way to reduce that level of power that he has? You understand? Because the absolute immunity It may not be the reason why he does anything, or does the things that he does, but it does enable him. It does enable him to do those things, and we can't say for sure. But is there a way to reduce that level of immunity that they have so that they can face the music from time to time on particular issues?
The cost is not for the poor man.
If your people are being killed while you are governor, you should be held responsible. You should be able to face the music for that and not just cry, oh, it's so terrible that this is happening to me, help me. No, we should be able to hold you. If you knew that you were going to be held responsible for the lives of those people, you would do everything to keep them alive, no?
Yeah, what you're saying now is the present situation when we have a federal police. By the time we have a state police, they would have no such excuse. That's the truth of the matter. And this question of immunity is necessary at this time. Even me as a legislator, there are cases I had in court in my first tenure that are still on till today. I just got a text this morning, for instance, that one of the judges in the High Court in charge of one of my cases has been elevated. So a new judge has come in now, and the case will start de novo. You can imagine a state governor going to court over and over again. It will be distracted completely.
You can't be distracted.
There's nothing wrong with going to court.
If they're distracted, we will see.
There's nothing wrong in going to court.
Let us see first if they will be distracted.
Immunity as the solution.
Let us see first.
I don't think that is the position.
No, you said you welcome people's views.
Yes.
If majority say this is what we want, you give them what they want.
Well, particularly in this 10th Assembly, the Right Honourable Speaker, Right Honourable Tajudeen Abbas, PhD, he has said that this house is the people's house. We must hear the people. So when we do the public hearing and the people insist on that, why not?
Well, Honourable, when he says the people's house, the people are asking, how is the National Assembly earmarking 4 billion now for recreational centre, 3 billion for a car park for House of Reps, 3 billion for Senate car park?
It is.
The people are questioning what's going on.
Yes.
10 billion in total for this?
The challenge really is that Nigerians don't understand, the vast majority of Nigerians don't understand how government operates. And many people out there would like to just stigmatize legislators. The truth of the matter is any infrastructural development taking place in the National Assembly is not done by the Assembly, not by the Senate President, not by the Speaker. It's by the Federal Capital Development Authority. They own the premises. They are the people who built it, and any new building going on there, they do all of that.
Is this a fair amount, this amount?
I'm coming.
This 10 billion?
I'm coming. But this is a good story to wipe sentiments against lawmakers. You know, we are the scapegoat. We are those to bear the bonds of anything, any story about
the one using the facility.
You see, but we are not in charge of that at all. The only thing that can happen from our end is that the committee, the House Committee or the Senate Committee on FCT, could invite the FCDA to come and shed light on this kind of expenditure and let us know whether it is justifiable. I can't sit here without seeing the the scope of work and all of that, and then pass a judgment.
All right.
The committee, relevant committee, will have to invite the FCDA and look at their papers and all of that. I assure Nigerians that project and any project going on in the premises of the National Assembly is not executed by the National Assembly. It's not a baby of the National Assembly.
Okay, we'll continue.
Legislators have no hand in all of that.
We'll continue this in just a moment, so don't go away.
Thank you for staying on with us. Honorable, let me begin with the question of funding. As at this moment, we all know what the minimum wage conversation is going on about. When we understand that some states couldn't pay 18,000 naira when that was the minimum wage, couldn't pay 30,000 naira when that was the minimum wage, and now we're asking for state police. From the little analysis that I have done, the United Nations recommends 1 policeman to 450 citizens in any particular environment. if we were to calculate the number of policemen Lagos needs, for instance, at 20 million man population, Lagos will be needing about 45,000 policemen on its own. And whatever the minimum wage comes to, that's what they're going to pay. And same for every state in the country. Where do you think, how easily would you think the funding of the state police would happen?
Thank you very much for that question. I don't believe that funding state police will be a challenge at all. At the moment, other than salaries that are handled by the federal government, most state police are being funded by the states. Talk about equipments, talk about vehicles, all by the states. So it's not going to be a major shift from the present position. And again, we must realize that the revenue that states are having today is far, 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 far higher than what they've ever had. Our state governors will come to the terms with it to know that most of these funds would have to be channeled towards security. So funding the state police, I don't believe would be an issue at all. They now have increased revenue, added to the fact that before now, they were the ones also funding infrastructure and other capital projects of the police in their respective states. So I don't think it will be a challenge at all. It's just the salaries that they are going to pick up. And of course, there must be an increase in the number of policemen across the country in every state. If you do an analysis right now, there are some states that have more policemen than others. By the time you bring in state police, I think there will be some rationalization such that those states that are underrepresented in the Nigerian police at the moment, when you do state police, such states will up their number, while the states that are overpopulated in the police force will have a way of managing the situation. By the time it comes to an equilibrium, every state will be able to fund it. And you remember that without security, nothing else can be done, no development, no peace. So I believe that the government at the state level will do the needful to fund the police to the best of their abilities.
Honorable, you haven't spoken to the fact that right now there are states who could not afford to pay the 30,000 naira minimum wage. Getting more policemen, taking all of their bills, means that their overhead will increase from what it is currently. Do you think every state has the capacity to fund its state police significantly to reduce the issues of insecurity in their states?
Yeah, with the level of income they get today, before May 29 last year, some states cannot pay their civil servants. That would be understandable. But with the present level, the present income they get from FARC, if there's any state that is not paying their workforce at the moment, I'm going to look for the word to use because the money is there. It just has to be applied correctly. Now that they have these huge resources coming, I don't see any state that should still complain of not being able to pay the current minimum wage, 30,000 naira monthly. No, they should even increase. They should increase. The 54,000 being discussed right now is even, it should be upped, you know, even for the federal, not to talk about the state. With this level of income, there must be an increase and all states must be able to fund it.
So let's talk quickly about that minimum wage issue that you just went to. What will you do? First of all, your assessment of this whole conversation around the minimum wage, at a time when the president promised a living wage. There's been conversations about what's the difference between minimum wage and living wage, but beside that, what do you think should be the minimum wage that should go to any worker in Nigeria, federal, state, or even private?
Well, there's hardship across the land at the moment, and what we call minimum wage is not a living wage. Sometimes you want to worry for your domestic staff, how they manage to survive. I will not be able to sit here and then conclude on a figure, because in Abuja, for instance, the cost of living is quite different from Delta State, where I hail from and represent. So to fix a figure from here would be a difficult situation. But there is a general consensus that there is absolute need to increase the minimum wage much higher than what it is right now. It will be a matter of negotiation. One individual cannot bring up a figure and impose it on the vast majority of Nigerians. I would rather encourage the negotiations that are going on. Labour refused 48,000, and yesterday they refused 54. They should continue the discussion. I hear they are meeting again shortly. That negotiation should go on, the federal government, and then the state governors, we understand we're not represented. They should come to the table so that by the time this negotiation is over, no state will renege on the promise that has been made. There is a need, an urgent need, to pay living wage so that the current hardship will be ameliorated for the vast majority of Nigerians.
So you also raised an important aspect of this conversation now, Honorable. Do you think the minimum wage should be uniform across the country, given what you said now, that the economies of the different states differ? Do you think it should be a uniform minimum wage across the land?
No, it shouldn't be uniform. Minimum is minimum. Even when we're doing 30, there are a couple of states that were paying above 30. So even when it is increased after this ongoing negotiation, that should be the national minimum. So some states that are doing better and where the cost of living is higher, they should, of course, pay higher than the national minimum. There mustn't be one unitary system of government that fixes a salary scale for the entire country. The cost of living differs depending on where you live. So I don't agree with that uniformity. But the minimum wage must be nationwide. Nobody must go below that level.
So, Honorable, I mean, many of these, we've heard some argument as to seeing how they could take away this minimum wage from the current list and make it concurrent, such that states can pay what they think they can. And Labour, of course, you know Labour's position, but from a lawmaker's perspective, what do you think of that?
I quite agree with you that these negotiations should be decentralized, and going forward, state governments should have that authority to do their own minimum wage in their own states. It should not be something that is exclusive to the federal government and the NLC, TUC to conclude on behalf. No. I think I'm grateful that the current Constitution Review Committee is looking at decentralizing power so that the center should be less attractive. That's the kind of thing you are talking about now, so that state governors should be able to have that authority to bring their own ideas on table to discuss with Labour.
The salaries of the governors, it doesn't matter how much resources your state has. Don't they all end the same?
Well, there is a federal law that fixes salaries for all political office holders across the country. That is different from minimum wage. Minimum wage is for everybody, the ordinary Nigerian. But when you talk about political office holders, there's a need for some control, for some guide. So I think we should leave that aspect of it.
No, why should we leave it? Because if they all don't earn the same, some that earn like 20 times more than others are earning the same with those other people. So why should we leave it? What if we then say, okay, look, well, since this threshold can stay, but if you're not, based on the resources that come through, the same group that fixes it can refix it.
No,
they don't have to leave it to the states to fix themselves. No, that's not what I'm asking.
My personal opinion, the income of political office holders should continue to be fixed by that agency. And it should be nationwide. Everybody should know it. It should be part of...
Yeah, we're not saying that that agency shouldn't fix it.
Yeah.
The agency can continue fixing it, but modify based on the revenue that comes in. You can't say, I can just go and sit there. If I earn 1 naira, I'll be earning the same thing as somebody that earns 30 naira.
So you know if you make less,
then you go and work harder.
No,
you know you're not going to earn as much.
No, you know we have a fundamental problem. Most of the income that goes to the sub-regional governments, the state governments, are from FAC, federal allocation. If it were based on internally generated revenue, then what you are saying now would have some bearing. that you as a governor, as a political officer, you get
FAC doesn't allocate
based
the same,
on what you earn,
but FAC
based on what you're able to generate.
Yes, Honorable, we hear you. But they don't allocate the same to all the states.
Yes.
Exactly,
they don't allocate the same to all the states, but all the states have access to this national basket. So
they can have access, but they don't get the same thing across board. That's still the same point.
You know the challenge here?
What is that?
Many of what the states get depend on natural endowments. And I'm from the Niger Delta. I don't want to go personal, you know. So if you look at it in that respect, you will agree that let that aspect of this thing be decided nationally. I think it's in our national interest to do that.
But the common man zone will now say, no, you can't get this, but leave this one.
No, there should be a minimum for the common man across the country, where we know that in the most hard-hit states,
so in that case, then, what's good for the goose is good for the... If you're earning the same, then minimum wage should stay the same across the board. Pay it, since you say you're getting from FAC. Pay from that FAC to all the people. Honorable Francis Nwaibe is the Chairman House Committee on Rules and Business. Thank you for your time this morning.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's go. It's the Business Morning on Sunrise Elise comes up right now.
Thanks, Trembele. Well, good morning, good evening, wherever the world you might be watching from. It's the trading day right after the MPC decision right here in Lagos, Nigeria, to hike more than expected as the CBN moves to tame inflation, stubbornly high inflation, that is. Let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. Starting with oil prices, it fell for a third straight session today on expectations the Federal Reserve could keep U.S. interest rates higher for longer due to sustained inflation. And we see that reflected in the numbers there. $82.45 a barrel. That's what we're seeing for Brent crude this morning. 0.05%, a marginal loss there. WTI crude, that's $78.16 a barrel, down 0.06%. So we're seeing WTI still staying lower, below that $80 mark. Prices settled about 1% lower. That was yesterday, as Fed policymakers said that the central bank could wait several more months to ensure that inflation really is back on track to its 2% target before cutting rates. And back here, let's get a check on the FX market. Now we see the Naira again at NAFEX, 23 Naira 91 kobo. So we're seeing more bullish sentiment for the Naira at this time. And it appears after every MPC meeting, the Naira kind of gains. And so we're seeing 1,465 Naira, 0.22% up. That's for NAFEM. And for NAFEX, 1,478 Naira. So it's below that 1,500 psychological level. So 1.59%. That's a gain for the Naira than the FX market. Let's bring you some other stories now. The Nigerian Exchange signed a memorandum of understanding with Mobilis, a UK-based development finance consultancy. Mobilis comes into the partnership to boost activities at the capital market by supporting product promoters and investment through technical assistance. The sectors to be focused on include technology, transport, energy, amongst others. Representatives from Mobilis and the NGX sealed a partnership at an evening event in Lagos, southwest Nigeria. Take a listen.
One of the fundamental things that we need to do in this market is to find an enabling environment or a conduit where international flows or capital can come into this our market and be able to help us address infrastructure gap, food security, and basically catalyze and grow the economy. To us, this is a very unique opportunity to also key into the vision of the present administration. The president has been very bullish about trying to grow the Nigerian economy to a $1 trillion economy in the next few years. We in the capital market and NGX actually believe that that is possible. And with this MOU and the activities that has happened today, we feel that it provides the enabling environments and market confidence to attract the much needed foreign capital into the market.
This is the start of a time where we're talking with potential collaborators, and that's the point of this event here. Hopefully amongst the crowd here there are people who want to work with us. The team will be talking to those people over the next week and then developing those ideas over time as we go further. One of the really interesting things I think that they're offering is not just the investment. The investment is important, but investment, to be honest, in some ways is a small part of this. There is then technical advice and research, and what that does is bring new ideas into the system and to help people think about new types of products, new ways of operating, or trying to unpick problems that they've looked at but haven't quite found a solution to.
And back to the latest MPC decision now. We see the benchmark interest rate this year, 750 basis points. That's what we've had for all the meetings this year. Let's listen to the central bank governor.
The committee's decisions are as follows. 1, raise the MPR by 150 basis points to 26.25% from 24.75%. 2, retain the asymmetric corridor around the MPR to plus 100 to minus 300 basis points. 3, retain the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45%. And 4, retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
And there you have it, 150 basis points higher than what most experts expected at this time. But let's get to the first conversation now. We see the EU, they have new rules for exports of cocoa, and that's set to take effect at the end of this year. This legislation aims to ensure that cocoa beans imported into the region are not linked to deforestation. Well, let's talk to Mr. Akin Laoye, now the CEO, Managing Director, FTN Cocoa Processors PLC, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
First of all, before we get into the cocoa industry at this time, I'd like to get your reaction to this latest hike by the MPC, 150 basis points. Some analysts were expecting a kind of hawkish, dovish tone, you know, from the CBN at this time, but it's full-on hawkish at this point. So talk to me about how you're seeing the way the new leadership of the CBN is handling taming inflation at this time.
Well, let me say clearly that the CBN governor does not have a choice in this. They've been improving things. We can see that his hands are on the buttons, and he doesn't really have a choice, but it's not really auguring well for those of us in the manufacturing sector. And indeed, it's also having some kind of transfer inflation to the citizens. So, but to be honest, they will continue to do this kind of balancing act to find a way around it, but it's tough.
Yeah, quite a tough job, and definitely from where I'm sitting, I don't think I want to wear that hat at this point, as the hat of the CBN government, because
well,
looking at the situation on ground right now,
it's a tough one.
And we'd like to see more, I guess, from the fiscal side of things, because we're seeing all the action, you know, coming from the monetary side.
Yeah. Well, again, too, I believe that they're working on those things. The truth is, the economy has been in a bad shape. So I don't really envy the job these guys are doing. They have to do a lot of irrigation, they have to do a lot of cleansing, draining the swamp, and all those kind of things. So we'll see all these things happening. By the kind of people we have in governance, I mean, the finance minister, I believe he understands what the economy is all about and knows what to do, and working with his team. Maybe some more supervision to the people working with them will make everything fall in line. We'll see.
And with what we've seen so far, you know, with inflation and, you know, all the macro headwinds we're seeing at this time, I'm seeing that this government is going to clock 1 year this month. Yeah. So I want to know what we're seeing right now. Are we asking for too much if we want change faster in this period?
To be honest, we are not asking for too much, because this thing is directly impacting lives. People are suffering. To that extent, I would not say we're asking for too much. And the president himself said that he applied for the job. He got it. And that we should not pity him. So we expect him to walk on waters. Whatever how it's going to do it, we don't know, because this thing is affecting our daily living. That's where the issue is. Otherwise, if you want to look at it from the point of view of how things have been, one would say give them some time. But you see, people are already dying out of hunger. That's where the issue is. So we have to look at that and find a balance.
Right.
As soon as possible.
A balance is definitely needed at this time. But let's get to the cocoa industry now. We're seeing this new rule from the EU, and at this point, it looks like they're trying to discourage deforestation, you know, at this time. And I know you play in that market. Talk to me about how this new rule is going to impact the industry.
Definitely, it will, especially because in Nigeria, we do not get to arrange things in the way it should be. Deforestation is something that should be a concern to everybody because of these climate change issues we are talking about. It has to do with the environment and everything. Our problem here in Nigeria is that we lack monitoring and proper regulations. So what they are saying is, okay, as far as I'm concerned, let's regulate the way our forests are managed. People do reckless deforestation without regards to climate change, without regards to what's going on in society. That's not how it should be. And I think government should monitor the reserves, monitor the way the environment works. Everything in Nigeria is why we are having issues. We start agitating. I mean, other countries are already aligning. People are already having regulations around how farms are managed. People manage, look at Nigeria. People just go into the bush, pull the trees down, use it to make charcoal and export. Everybody's doing whatever they like. That's not right. For me, it's good if we can follow it, and then let's see what we can do to make sure that the farms, the forests are preserved. Then we organize the way we arrange our farms. It doesn't affect cocoa alone. It affects coffee. It affects even cattle rearing and all those kind of things. We need to arrange our society.
And from the picture you just painted now, how easy or tough do you think compliance will be?
It's going to involve a lot of things. It's tough. Number one, we have smallholder farmers. There are a lot of things you need to put into place so that you can confirm that you are not bringing your product from a deforested zone, right? There is need for some kind of GSP coordination and all those kind of things. So it will cost some money. When you look at the farmers, they are like peasants. They are not, the incentive to do those stuff is not there for them. So some kind of support, some kind of farmer education, and maybe elders education can help in this place. It's going to be some major one. Even for people like us who end up using the product, we are beginning to see customers asking for the EU DRO certification. That means we also have to pay attention to what our farmers are doing. That's an extra cost on top of the headwinds we are facing. You know, infrastructure gaps, high cost of money. This is choking.
Talking about high cost of money, it's gotten even higher.
Higher, and you don't even know what it will be in the next month, just because government is trying to arrest the situation in the economy. So it's tough. It's really a tough situation now.
Looking at the industry, definitely, and how much revenue Nigeria gets from cocoa. What would you say needs to be done at this time to rev up that revenue? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to diversify the economy, move away from oil, and all of that. So how much can cocoa bring to the table at this point?
Cocoa has a lot to bring. And I've said it in several forums to government. The government needs to be intentional and focused. I think our problem here is the crude oil. It's giving us headache. It's not making us to think correctly. 22 states in Nigeria can grow cocoa. I don't see any reason why, in a time where we have massive unemployment, why government will not make sure attention is paid to that, make sure the land is available, encourage guys who will go into cocoa farming. You have young people who can go there. Look at the price of cocoa today. It got to a massive price that people now see it as serious gold. Okay, so if we had increased our farms, the output will have increased, and that means more money for Nigeria.
Right, and definitely talking about more money, we see the Agric minister there saying that Nigeria's cocoa export accounted for about 29% of the total Agric export for 2023. So is that a number we're impressed with? 29%?
I'm not impressed, and I'm surprised he's talking that way. Whatever number you're saying here is because of the spike in cocoa price. It has nothing to do with output. I think the concern should be the output. What exactly are we doing? So giving that number to me is just escapist. They're just trying to grandstand and it's not giving a true picture of what things are. And I think those in government should understand the nuances in these sectors, in the economy. Otherwise, we'll be going in a circus.
And we keep talking about adding value to our exports at this time. Have we seen any improvement, so far when it comes to adding value to a product like cocoa?
The value addition is the most critical point, pressure point. Incidentally, that's what I do. And I don't see government giving the kind of support that sector requires. Investment in a typical cocoa processing plant is very high. Like I speak to you today, the average investment for a 20,000 tons capacity factory is $20 million before the working capital. That's a lot of money. So you see, we can't develop that space without without some kind of support. We're not asking government to give gift of money. What we just want is some kind of enabling environment, environment that will make policies suitable for the people in that industry. And these are verifiable things. So I think government needs to sit down, engage the people in the sector, and see how we can get a roadmap to where we are headed. Right. Because value addition is what can help us. Apart from the farming, the next point is the value addition set. Because exporting the cocoa beans is just, we're not doing good to our massive population that are unemployed.
Because the money from exporting cocoa is not bad, but I hear the chocolate money. That's
where the money is. That's right.
Exactly. Thank you so much. It was great having your perspective.
Thank you.
Today, Mr. Akin Ilayo is the CEO, MD of FTN Cocoa Processors. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
All right, we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll take the conversation further. We'll find out where venture capitalist money is going in a high-interest environment. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. All right, it's time to take a look at how venture capitalists are seeing investments in high-interest environments in Africa. Joining us now is Maria Rotilu. She's a general partner at OpenSeed VC, joining me via Zoom from the UK. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So I'm pretty sure, venture capitalists like you follow inflation, FX issues and interest rates in African economies. And, we know just yesterday the MPC raised rates by 150 basis points. How do you see the latest hike in Nigeria?
Yeah, no, great question. I think if we think about venture capital and what OpenSeed is trying to build, we're trying to back experienced operators who are creating value with that initial capital and support to getting them to do that. I think if you think about an interest rate environment that's quite higher, it's pretty much limited liquidity in the economy. What that means from a, capital allocation standpoint is that most capital allocators are probably going to debt. And you can see in terms of the falling allocation to venture capital more globally, it's getting tougher and tougher to raise venture capital in this climate because most people are putting capital in, debt instruments that kind of give high yields, which is deliberate because governments are trying to implement these monetary policies to reduce the liquidity in the market and kind of take a hold of inflation. But there's a flip side to this. On the other hand, this is the perfect time for innovators, for operators, for people who have spotted problems to begin to solve them using technology. In this kind of climate, cost-saving solutions really, really catch on. In this type of climate, value creation solutions, expanding markets, giving people ways to earn more, to cut their costs, these become even more important in this climate. With every single, economic issue where you have high interest rates, where you have a downturn, you see some incredible startups going up. You see the gig economy coming off of the back of the fact that people were looking to save costs. You see shifting consumer behavior. So while this is a very difficult environment, if you think about the impact of just people's discretionary income, people's ability to earn, I think on the flip side, this is an incredible time for innovators to think and say, how do we create value in terms of reducing the costs using technology? How do we create value in terms of opening up markets for local entrepreneurs to global markets? These are a few thoughts.
Right. I guess, according to you, this is not the time to pack your bags and go back to your village, right? It's time to get innovative at this time. But what kind of solutions are, VCs looking to pile money into in Africa in 2024?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on the VC's thesis. I would say that for us at Open Seed, we look at three major areas: the future of commerce, future of work, and future of health. If you think about commerce, Africa just contributes, I think, 3% to global commerce, or is it Nigeria at this point? But you see that it's a very low number in terms of our contribution to global commerce. And I think that technology is a key lever for this. So we are looking for innovative technologies that make it simple to access. It brings discovery, it brings transparency, it brings efficiencies, helping people who are creating both digital and physical exportable services, creating a technology layer that makes this easier for them and helps us really globally compete. I always say, Africa does not exist in a silo. Nigeria does not exist in a silo. Every single government is trying to implement policies to make sure that their economies are stable. I think we are in a very incredible point, despite the difficulties, for us to begin to look at the problems and see them as opportunities to create value and create, economic impact as well. And from a future of work perspective, we continuously hear the data that says that Africa, 1 out of 4 people are going to be African by 2050. We have the lowest median age. Most emerging economies have really aging populations, but we have this young capital. And yes, there's a problem and a discussion to be had around the quality of the human capital. But I think again, technology brings an interesting viewpoint, because now there's the leveling in terms of the access, in terms of the information, in terms of the technology that can actually essentially get people being upskilled and offering value globally and creating that value that brings inflows into the country, that creates value for all, both investors and local economies alike. Right. So yeah, those are a few things on the Open Seed side.
Okay, so what are the key elements, investors look for when considering, funding, say, a startup at this time?
At the very early stage, which is where we play, we are first investors in experienced operators just launching their technology companies. I would say that for us, it's really about the team. The reason why we optimize for operators, and we define them as people who either have been at high growth technology startups, who've built startups of their own, and who can build technology companies, at least the initial versions of it. We really think that it comes down to the team. A great operator identifies a big problem, and they have the ability to be able to execute on it. I think that if you think about how investors think about what good looks like, it really boils down to the team. But there are two other things we also look at: the market opportunity. Venture capital is not a lifestyle business. Oftentimes it looks at really large outcomes. So it's very important that the, impact financially and both economically is significant. Because it is a product, a financial product, it does have intentions to return to its original investors by investing in incredible startups and founders at the earliest stages. So I would say it's a combination of the team and the market and their ability to actually tackle that market and solve a big problem that creates economic value for investors and the economy.
And looking at the state of things at this time, do VCs still have the time to, guide, startups, even though they've invested in these startups?
Yes, some VCs have really incredible approaches to founder support, but there's also VCs that believe that the best founders don't need support. I think no matter how great you are as a founder, you will take all the support you can get. And one of the fresh approaches that we've brought from an Open Seed VC standpoint is, even as we invest, we have a community of incredible operators. These are software engineers, these are product managers, these are people who've actually executed at global tech companies, who are there to support you and the founders with insight, with actual help, with things like recruiting, with things like code review, with things like product review. I think that things like this or models like this with VC is going to be critical, especially in this time, because it's so difficult to raise in the early stages. And to be honest, if you're trying to build anything noteworthy that's impactful, you would need all the help you can get from experts who've gone ahead and done it ahead of you.
And definitely cash flow is really important at this time, for startups and most of these tech companies. But, talk to me about common mistakes, some of these startups make or are making currently, making it hard for you to actually, invest in them.
Yeah, that's, if we go through all the mistakes, we will not have enough time, but I'll touch on just a few. I would say that the first and most common mistake I tend to see is founders solving a problem that's not necessarily a problem. They think it's a problem, but the customers don't think it's a problem. So a lot of founders sometimes project their own passions and excitements on the market. The best founders I know have anchored on a problem. They've looked and said, this is a problem. The other thing I would say is that it being a problem is just the beginning. It has to be a problem that's recurring. It has to be a problem that's painful enough. It has to be a problem that you can monetize. It has to be a problem that you can build a business out of. There's a common saying that says that there might be a gap in the market, but is there a market in the gap? I really, really think that the best founders anchor on a problem and they iterate and they execute and they experiment and they see that there is a problem here that's large enough to not just house a problem, but also a market and a sustainable business model on the top of that. If you look at the successful technology companies we've seen today, companies like InterSwitch, companies like Paystack, like Flutterwave, you've seen a lot of fintechs that have come out. They all stem from a problem. Someone woke up and thought and said, there is a problem here, and maybe there's a business here, and we shall experiment on that. And it got to where it is, over time. So I think those are a few problems that I tend to see in my work as a VC.
Right. I guess if you identify that problem, make sure it's a real problem. Definitely. Well, thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. Maria Rotilu, General Partner at OpenSeed VC. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get a quick check on the markets. Now, let's see how the markets closed yesterday. And yes, it's a green close. 0.11% for the NGX. The day of the decision there by the MPC, raising rates by 150 basis points, and we see a green close, even though we've had negative closes so far. 61 billion, that was added to the market cap. Let's look at the volume and trading activity now. We see it's mostly subdued for yesterday. 45% down for volume. Value, 5.15 billion stocks traded, 23% down. So we're seeing lower activity there in the market yesterday compared to the previous trade. Top trades, GTCO, 40.64 million traded. Access Score, so it's all financial services for the top trades by volume yesterday. So now, definitely, the market, a green close right after the MPC made that rate announcement, and we'll be looking out for how the market plays out for the rest of the week. We know it's been negative closes for the week so far that we've had in this market, and we'll see if the bulls will come out and play today. And so much to look forward to. And this week, we'll still have the GDP report for the first quarter of 2024. We'll see how that's going to shape market sentiment going forward. But that's it from me on Business Morning. Markets are open now. We'll give a summary of closing numbers later. I'm Ladi Williams, and it's back to the Sunrise Daily team.
Welcome back. Well, yes, as you've seen there, Dr. Isiaq Salako joins us next. He is the Minister of State for Environment. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much, Amberlin. It's nice coming here.
Yeah, so let me see. Maybe I should start this way. It's a pretty interesting one to start with. It's 1 year on, Absolutely. So for the president, and all of that celebration will be going on now. There'll be several questions as to performance. So for you, your ministry, so why should the president retain you, for instance, if he was considering a cabinet reshuffle?
Well, I think that largely, if you look at what we have been able to do as Minister of Environment in the last 9 months since I came on board, and my colleague, the minister, also came on board 3 months later, we have been able to clearly reflect the aspirations of Mr. President and his vision as contained in the Renew Hope agenda. If you look at that document, you see that the environmental sector cut across different sectors of the economy because of the cross-cutting nature of the environment. For example, if you go to the power sector, the agenda of Mr. President is to increase penetration of renewable energy. And if you look at what we have done in the last 9 months or thereabouts, we have been able to increase not only the awareness of renewable energy, we have also been able to increase the adoption of renewable energy, generally speaking. I can tell you as an example, a lot more people now are more aware of the advantage of renewable energy over the fossil-driven energy sources, and quite a number of people are now adopting it. I can use myself as a testimony. In my house in Abuja here, I don't have a generator. I use solar lights. When there is grid, I use it. If there is no grid, I use solar.
So the ministry has been championing this
kind of thing. That's one clear vision of Mr. President that we're able to mirror. If you look at the oil and gas sector, Mr. President also said in his Renew Agenda document that he was going to work towards the flaming out of gas flaring. And we have set up a mechanism that is doing that. One key operator has already flamed out completely from routine use of gas, flaring gas in his operations. And we have set up a mechanism. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to be meeting with all oil and gas operators in Nigeria to be able to also interface with them, rub minds on what are the roadmap that they're doing to ensure that they flame out. That is in the oil and gas sector. If you look at the agricultural sector, Mr. President also promised to ensure that we adopt climate-smart agricultural practices. We are reflecting that, and so on and so forth. In a fiscal policy of Mr. President, he also promised to ensure that we address the challenges that is occasioned by incessant flooding and erosion. Yes, that is not completely within human control, but we have also been able, to a large extent, address some of those challenges. So I think that by and large, we have been able, in the Federal Ministry of Environment, to reflect the aspiration and vision of Mr. President.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at some of those which you mentioned, but let me start with the renewable. So, because, I mean, listening to you, there'll be several companies who will be interested in that one, because you say a lot of people are adopting it now, you know, thanks to part of the work your ministry is doing. Is there any data to back this up? How could people relate with this one if they're looking to see what examples, companies, for instance, any organizations that have taken it, do you have data so people can look and see how do they plug into this?
The data actually will be better provided by the Ministry of Power. But I can tell you that to obtain such data takes time, because this is a program that our target is basically to ensure that by 2030, we have at least 30% of our energy generation and supply from renewables. And we're working towards that. For us to be able to provide data, we also need to carry out the, surveys and all that. But if you look at empirical evidence, interaction with people, and I'm sure you may also be able to bear me witness, a lot more people are aware of the benefit of renewable over the SY fossil fuel-driven energy sources.
So other than advocacy, does the ministry talk about specifications in terms of what people need to bring in, or you leave that to the Ministry of Power in terms of how it suits the environment?
Yes, there are a lot of bodies that are involved in it. We have the Standard Organization of Nigeria, then we have the Ministry of Power, and then we have some of the agencies within the Ministry of Power. Our own responsibility as Ministry of Environment is to ensure that we coordinate the penetration of renewable energy into the Nigerian power system. So you now find out that within that coordination system that we have, a lot of other agencies have their own specific roles that they have to play. So that is why the energy transition plan of Nigeria is situated mostly within the Federal Ministry of Environment because of the coordination role that we have to play.
That energy transition plan is one that has been talked about for a very long time. And yes, of course, we have seen a lot of things happen even in the past administration, even into the Tinubu administration. But one line that has been of contention is the fact that access to energy in countries like Nigeria, and I remember hearing the former Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, saying this all the time. We have to be able to draw the line between our climate change commitments and actual access to energy in our parts of the world. Is that something that is being looked at? Because at the time, they were looking at, oh, how do we how can we keep up with our commitments? So we're going to reduce how much gas we're flaring. Meanwhile, we have such a massive population that don't even have access to this energy.
Well, this thing is a process, and it's a gradual process. First, gas flaring is not only inimical to the environment, it's also an economic waste. So if we're able to put systems together that is able to harness that sources of energy, then definitely we'll be doing a lot of good, not only to the environment, also to our economy. But beyond that, you'll see that when we're talking about energy transition, it is not that we're going to wake up tomorrow and say, everybody go renewable. It's a process that over time we want to be able to move gradually over time, because science has proven beyond any doubt that our fossil fuel dependent economies is driving some of the challenges that we're facing with respect to the climate. So there's a plan that's over time. So our energy transition plan is also designed to address energy poverty so that people can have more access to energy. And that is why we talk more about renewable energies. We are talking about gas as a transition source of fuel, So both of them can actually work together, our climate change commitments and also reducing energy poverty within our country. Both of them can actually work together.
I want to be able to talk a little bit about the compressed natural gas moves by the President Tinubu administration. We're seeing rollouts in many parts of. I saw Governor Dapo Abiodun bringing out a lot of buses, for mass transport, but we're not seeing that across the country. Apart from its benefits to the environment, there's also the fact that access to proper transportation has become very hard for the Nigerian, given the economic situation of the country. That's something that the Ministry of Environment oversees. And, many people have been talking about that directive he gave, where he said, look, don't come to me with any request for petrol-powered vehicles, only CNG. The enforcement of that is also being brought into question. Would you like to weigh in on that?
Well, first, I must say that Ogun State is always first. I am from Ogun State. I'm very proud that Ogun State is leading the way. But talking more seriously, when we talk about the directive and policy of government with respect to compressed natural gas, government is not going to establish stations all over the country for people to get gases. But the policy of government drives businesses and drives attention into that area. You will see that with that pronouncement from Mr. President, a lot of more investors will become more interested. They will focus their attention, and over time, you will see that the infrastructure to supporting that policy and the enforcement of it will gradually begin to materialize. It's not going to happen overnight that we're going to create gas stations all over the country before the policy is made. No, the policy drives the infrastructure. So we'll make the policy first, and you now see investors tapping into that policy. And I believe that as we go forward, you'll see that a lot more, because clearly it has been shown that apart from the environmental friendliness of CNGs, it is also cheaper in terms of driving our energy. So we must go that way. And we have abundance deposit of gas in our country. So there's nothing stopping us.
There's one project that the Ministry of Environment embarked upon. It was part of our climate change commitments, and it was the building of the Great Green Wall. I don't know if you remember this. It was the Great Green Wall was supposed to help desertification and the issues that we're having with droughts in many parts of Africa. How far has Nigeria gone in in fulfilling its own bit of the Great Green Wall?
Well, the process is on. I can tell you that in the last 1 year, through the Great Green Wall, the National Great Green Wall Agency, we have been able to at least provide restoration through afforestation processes of not less than 1.5 million hectares of land. And like I said, it's an ongoing process. So I think that this is a project that is projected to terminate in 2030. So we continue with it over time, and hopefully we continue to grow it. But beyond the Great Green Wall project too, there are also a lot of afforestation projects going on. The Forest Research Institute of Nigeria in Ibadan is doing it. We have state government also doing it. The federal ministry as a body is also doing it, and so on and so forth. So when we cumulatively do that, because definitely we must raise the forest cover of Nigeria, in order to be able to protect our climate, because the trees, our biodiversity, plays a lot of role in that respect. So we must continue to work in that direction.
Well, you say Ogun State is first, but fingers have been pointed at Ogun State about the challenges, for the problems with flooding in Isheri. You've been there a couple of times. Even while you were a minister, you also knew about those areas. And I think the last time you did get an interview saying that I think there's a report, you're trying to understand what the problem is, what causes the flooding there. So what is the update now?
Yeah, well, I had a stakeholders meeting with the residents of Isheri, including residents from Lagos State and mostly from Ogun State, about 6 weeks or thereabout ago. And what I've been able to communicate to them is that the process for the study is ongoing. But that study is a comprehensive study, and it's going to take some time. And it's not going to be able to produce results that will help us within this flooding season. However, we have put mechanism in place to ensure that some remedial action is done to ensure that even if the flooding is going to occur this year, we expect that the impact will be less than what we witnessed last year. So for now, we're going to do some palliative measures while the study continues. So when the comprehensive result of the preliminary thing that they've told us is going to cost us, as at about 2-3 months ago, it's going to cost us tens of billions of naira.
So
to do
the what?
The preliminary estimates.
Preliminary?
Yes.
Tens of billions?
Of naira to do the comprehensive remediation of, because we need to start the study from the source of Ogun River in Oyo State and do the study up to when the Ogun River empties into the Atlantic Ocean in Lagos State. See all the factors around that. You know, it's been suggested that we also need to even create some earthen dams so that when the river is overflowing, the earthen dam can be a source to receive some of those water. We need to desilt a lot of rivers, including some of the tributaries of River Ogun, and so on and so forth. So that study is still on, and we hope that before the next flooding season, we can have that comprehensive study, and then we can then start to see how we can implement that project, probably in phases.
He who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. Ayo.
You're so right on that point, Chamberlain, because the natural question I was going to ask is, first of all, how the states collaborate with the federal government, particularly the Federal Ministry of the Environment, on the initiatives that you are talking about. We've heard countless times that there will be flooding, and we always get that feedback from the relevant agencies between November and December into the new year, that the X number of places will be flooded for X number of days, and X number of days of rain we're going to have in the year, yet we still have such serious flooding in many of these environments. So exactly what do you think is happening here? Is it that we are not able to get ahead of the issues? What exactly do you think is responsible for the loss that people are still experiencing, even though we have information well ahead of time?
Well, thank you very much. In terms of collaboration, we continue to collaborate with states. You must know that, as an example, we just recently had our National Environmental Council, where all states were represented, all commissioners of environment in all the states, with some of their directors and permanent secretary are there. With respect to flooding, we also have a platform where every state in Nigeria is represented, where we're able to continuously share information on what is going on, and then states can pick from those information to also action some measures to protect their states in terms of flooding. But I must also tell you that when it comes to the issue of flooding, our structural and non-structural interventions may not be enough to completely eliminate flooding from our system. And that is why when we're talking about flooding, we talk about mitigation, and we also talk about adaptation. Adaptation means that living with it. So when we have flooding, that's why warnings are issued so that we can take measures to protect our properties and to protect our lives. Sometimes we may not be able to say we can become 100% flood-free. And if you look at it globally, this is a global phenomenon which is occasioned by the challenge of climate change. What I can tell you is that government continues to work very hard. We continue to take all steps to protect the properties and the life of Nigerians to ensure that they are not lost to flooding. We also continue to take measures
we'll speak about the
negative impact is minimized.
Yeah, my apologies, Honorable Minister, for butting. We'll come to the climate action bit in a moment. But could we have eroded floodplains, or couldn't we have totally, allowed ourselves to not build in those areas? Couldn't we have avoided building in those areas and mitigate these issues, these accidents, these incidences well ahead of time? Why give, these floodplains for residential areas or even businesses in some cases, if we knew that there are floodplains that could occasion loss of lives and property in some cases?
Yes, of course. Those are challenges that we need to continuously address. In terms of planning regulation, sometimes we are not too strong on it, especially at the subnational levels. And that is very, very important to ensure that we protect the natural course of things. When you go and build in floodplains, of course, you are inviting flooding yourself. But I must also tell you that flooding that sometimes experiences beyond also, for example, what was seen in Dubai a few months ago, you see that it's not about building in floodplains, because there was torrential rain for a long time beyond the capacity of the soil to immediately soak away. And then you now find a lot of places that get flooded as a result of that. But I agree with you absolutely that we must ensure that we scale up our regulatory capacities with respect to planning so that we do not unnecessarily invite these natural disasters to ourselves.
The question then is how, Honorable Minister? How do we do that?
There are laws guiding building approvals in every state of the Federation. Before you do any construction, before you do any development, you're supposed to approach the government to obtain building approvals, and government is supposed to be able to say, look, we can't build in these places. As a matter of fact, the last time when I visited Sherry that we were talking about, I had to tell the stakeholders, look, go and talk to yourself. Some of your properties may have to give way if you really want to address this problem comprehensively. So it's just better enforcement that we need. The laws are there just to enforce those laws.
I understand what happened in Dubai, because some similar thing has happened in Nigeria as well, 2012 and 2022. But speak to this particular issue. Recently, the president inaugurated a committee to oversee Nigeria's climate policies. And the move, we understand, the move is to remove constraints to coordination, foster a whole-of-government approach to climate action programs and all of that. What is the role that the Federal Ministry of the Environment is playing in that particular committee?
Well, you will see that in that committee, the vice chairman is the Minister of Environment, which means that in the absence of the president, he chairs that meeting. Which means that coordination role is still significantly being played by the Ministry of Environment. And you also see some agencies of the Federal Ministry of Environment, like the Great Green Wall, represented in that committee. I think that committee also speaks to the importance that Mr. President attaches to the environment and rising to the challenges of climate change. We believe strongly that that committee is going to help in driving some of our climate commitment and ensuring that Nigeria delivers on those commitments.
The natural question that will come around that, Honorable Minister, is when are we going to have significantly impactful awareness and education of Nigerians? We can talk about what happens in urban Nigeria, but in suburban and rural Nigeria, the conversation is entirely different. And there are those who would wonder whether or not, as you mentioned earlier, the states are even enlightened enough to know what to do about such serious implications of climate action or inaction in their states. So it speaks back to the states. Are we carrying them on enough? Do they know how serious these climate action issues are for them to take you know, the kind of action that they need to take?
Well, we must scale up our awareness and sensitization efforts. At the Federal Ministry of Environment level, we have designed programs that are going to help us to scale this up. One of those programs that I'm going to mention is that we're going to increase the penetration and capacity of our environmental health officers. In Nigeria, we have more than 60,000 registered environmental health officers, most of them employed at the local government level. So we're working out a program that is going to coordinate the effort of those environmental health officers so that they can become sensitizers, advocates at the grassroots levels to ensure that our awareness creation is scaled up. So that we're doing. Beyond that, we're going to be using a lot of media, including traditional and non-traditional media, to ensure that we increase the awareness with respect to climate issues, environmental challenges, and so on and so forth. And of course, we continue to engage the subnational levels, the state government. And I must tell you that quite a number of states are also coming up. Last year, we did a survey, which is a survey to determine the level of policy and knowledge at the subnational levels with respect to climate change. And what we found was very interesting. It was not very encouraging, but we're working on improving on that as a result of that survey that we carried out. So I assure you that we're working very closely with the state government to ensure that we increase the capacity of the state and also we increase their responses to these issues around our climate.
You know, almost 3 weeks ago, you said that the Ministry of Environment applied in December last year for an environment, ESIA basically, for the 700-kilometer Lagos-Calabar coastal road. And then you also did say that there were loopholes in the law, which you're going to take to FEC to see how they can correct it. So what is the update on that?
Well, I knew you were going to ask this question, so I would have been surprised if you didn't. I would have been surprised if you didn't. I would have been surprised if you didn't because it's the question of the moment, really. But talking seriously, the process for plugging of those loopholes is on. Doing laws is not something because apart from going to FEC, you still have to come to the National Assembly. You know, so that process is on. That's all I can say for now with respect to that. But we continue to take very seriously the issue of environmental and social impact assessment around projects, either private or public, and the Minister of Environment is started with the mandate of doing that, and it's one of the mandates that we take very seriously. So we continue to work in that direction. So
what ills do you want to correct
with
the law, what you're seeking?
Well, basically, we see that there's some areas that people tend to take advantage of that are not properly blocked in the law. I would not want to unnecessarily bring that out now because, you know, some of these issues are also become very sensitive and we don't want unnecessary lobbying and all that at this point in time that we're still working through a process, you know. But clearly what we're trying to do is just to strengthen capacity of the ministry to do the EISIA. That's all.
So at the time when the president signed that document with ministers and said, I need you to perform or I'm going to have to let you go, was there a time frame put on that?
Well, I think that, for me, I think that for the president, it's up to the president to decide because the president may, within a one-year period, come to the conclusion that you're not performing enough. It may be within 2 years, maybe within 3 years. I think it's the prerogative of the president to determine whether you are performing or not at any point in time.
Do you think he will scale that test if he went through the Ministry of Environment and all of the activities and everything?
I have not seen where a student becomes
well, what do you think? Do you think you've done well?
Well, I've told you I've done well, in my own opinion. But you see, it's just the prerogative of Mr. President because what I am seeing may not be what the Mr. President is seeing.
All right, Dr. Isiaq Salako is the Minister of State for the Environment. Thank you for coming on today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Let's see, do we have time for...
messages?
Yes, I mean, we always have time for our viewers, but just looking at if we can squeeze that in. This is from Professor Nohena, who says, if we juxtapose local government elections and state policing, where state governors, political parties win all local government election, state policing, if not handled carefully, He says Nigeria would have dug a pit where they are unable to emerge from.
We have this one here from Charles Mwatu. Why can't we make the police chief an electable person? That way, they will be responsible to the people, not the governor. Reforming the Nigerian police and limiting the powers of the state governors over them is very simple, but I believe that our politicians lack the courage and know-how. After all, these are people who did not have any idea about policy making, but got in as it is their turn. How do you know, Charles?
Oh, dear. Okay, we do thank you all for watching. We appreciate your messages. Please keep them coming. Well, that's the show today. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
I'm Kayla Magua. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Well, we acknowledge all of your own messages as well. Hassan, Umar, and several others who sent in. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.